And according to the Motion Picture Association of America, China's box office revenues increased by 36% to $2.7 billion last year, making it the world's second biggest movie market and highlighting its importance to Hollywood. And joining me now from LA with more on the resolution between Hollywood and China is Lindsay, partner at Manatt, Phelps and Phillips. Lindsay, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Michelle. Pleasure to be with you.
So, Lindsay, the China Film Group had insisted that Hollywood studios pay that 2% value-added tax out of their share of Chinese box office revenues, cutting into their profits. What's the final outcome, and what are the implications of this now being resolved?
Well, as we understand it, at the end of the day, the Hollywood studios will not have to absorb the value-added tax, so they'll be getting the full 25% of the box office, which was, as Hollywood understands it, part of the deal that President Xi Jinping reached with Vice President Biden last year. I think it's a great outcome for both sides. China is a powerful nation, and one can say it doesn't need Hollywood, but clearly China has understood that Western story techniques and Western filmmaking is something that's useful for Chinese cinema, not only for Chinese filmgoers, but also to expand Chinese culture around the world. Hollywood's a powerful industry. You could say it doesn't need China, but of course it really does. China's the largest untapped market in the world for Hollywood. So both sides need each other, and this is a great way to come together.
So a big happy ending, a big hurrah for Hollywood, as they say. How much revenue will this bring in for Hollywood studios now?
Well, the 2% increment is probably worth $20 or $30 million this year. But China's film market is expanding so rapidly that over the next 4 or 5 years, it would not be surprising that this is worth $60, $70, $80 million or more per year to the studios. It's a big chunk of money.
Now, China, as you mentioned, recently allowed foreign filmmakers to keep a bigger share, going from 13% to 25%. In terms of percentage cuts, how is this relationship with China and Hollywood studios different from how it is in other global markets?
Well, in most other global markets, the Hollywood studios are free to negotiate with whichever local distributors they want. It's entirely negotiable what percentage share of the box office they get. It does tend to be higher than the 25% that's now in place between the United States and China. And there's more negotiating room for the studios in terms of when their films will be released and for how long they'll play. But it still was a major improvement when China agreed to raise the share for the studios from the previous roughly 15% to 25%.
But Lindsay, isn't the bigger issue here really the quota limit that China has on foreign films? Up until last year, China had only allowed 20 big foreign films a year to be released. They then made a deal that allows in an extra 14 films each year, provided that they are in IMAX or 3D formats. So really, how much of an issue is this tight film quota that China imposes?
Well, it's still an issue in the sense that Hollywood studios would like to be free to export all of their films to China and try to find a market in that huge Chinese audience, a market that will be the biggest in the world probably by 2018, certainly by 2019. So Hollywood would like to see it expanded. But clearly the move from 20 to 34 was a major step forward to free trade in the film business between Hollywood and China. It does allow a lot more films in, allows a lot more of the blockbusters to seek an audience in China. And as I say, hopefully will be a step down the road to one day pretty much allowing free flow of films between U.S. filmmakers and Chinese audiences and Chinese filmmakers and U.S. audiences.
Now, although it's been quite a small amount in terms of numbers, it still has accounted for about 40% of the country's box office takings. And some in China's local film industry say that the extra foreign films will squeeze domestic producers. Others say that it may ultimately raise quality. What's the likely impact that having a bigger Hollywood presence will have on China's domestic film industry?
Well, it's hard to tell, Michelle, but you know, this year the evidence is strongly in favor of a vibrant film industry locally in China. Last year, through the first half of the year in 2012, foreign films dominated the Chinese box office. But this year in 2013, it's just the opposite. Locally made Chinese films are doing extremely well at the box office and don't seem to be in danger of being squeezed out by anybody. I think in the long run,
right.
As Chinese cinema gets better and better, the number of U.S. or other foreign films available to Chinese audiences won't matter that much to Chinese producers. They won't need that protection because they're going to find a real connection with local audiences in China that will really appreciate the themes that they express and the way that they express them.
Well, you know, Disney released Iron Man 3, which had its content catered specifically for the Chinese market. I'm assuming we will be continuing this trend in the future. We're going to have to leave it there, though. Thank you so much, Lindsay Gourmet, a partner at Manatt, Phelps and Phillips. And from Phillips to Phil, we're tossing back to you in D.C.